I just came back from the UK. I hope you're all well. And I visited one of the most famous palaces in the world. It's called Hampton Court Palace. It has a really big history, and I want to tell you all about it. Today, I'm going to ask my daddy to ask me some questions about the Tudors, the Stuarts, and the Georgians. Thank you.
So, what is the Tudor dynasty? Who are the Tudors?
It started off with King Henry VII, who beat King Richard II, and he got the crown. And that was the start of the Tudor dynasty. The Tudor dynasty lasted for 180 years and ended with Queen Elizabeth I.
Queen Elizabeth I, and after that?
After that, it went
What
to
happened?
the Stinky Stuarts.
Wow. So what happened to Elizabeth I? Didn't she have any sons or daughters?
No, she wasn't married. She said, I am a virgin queen and I will die a virgin queen.
I see. So can you tell me a bit about the famous kings and queens of the Tudors? Who are the famous king and queens of the Tudors?
Actually, of the Tudors. Okay, so it started with King Henry VII, as I told you about. He married Elizabeth of York, who gave birth to Arthur, who was supposed to be king, but then he died in a horse riding event. So the crown went to his younger brother Henry VIII. At first, he was not in line. He was in line to be king,
Who?
but King Henry VIII,
Alright.
the famous fat king.
Mm.
Well, he wasn't fat in the first place. That happened after his. Oh, and also he's famous for his sixth wife, actually.
Oh, who are his six wives?
His first wife was Catherine of Aragon.
Why did he marry so many wives?
Actually, first, Catherine of Aragon was originally planned to marry King Henry VIII's older brother, King Arthur. But when he died, Catherine of Aragon married King Henry VIII. And they got married for 24 years, and that's the longest amongst all the marriages King Henry VIII had. Then he wanted to marry Anne Boleyn. Well, but the Pope didn't allow him to divorce Catherine.
Oh, so he was Catholic?
He was Catholic, and the Catholic religion, you're not allowed to divorce. So, because of the law, he grew impatient for waiting for a reply from Rome. So he tore the country apart, and he banned Catholicism and replaced it with the Church of England, the Protestants. Now the Protestants have lasted really long now.
Who was the head of the Church of?
It was King Henry VIII, but Elizabeth also chose to be also wants to be the head. So she told other people that I make a rule that I'll be the head. But then someone agreed and she executed him.
Oh, well, coming back to Henry VIII, can you tell me a bit more about Anne Boleyn and the other wives that got married to Henry VIII?
Oh yes, Anne Boleyn was a mistress of Henry VIII. She was funny, she was talented, and she was really very smart. She was smart as Catherine, his first wife, wife number one. So when Henry married him, she had 2 miscarriages and gave birth to one baby girl, the famous Queen Elizabeth I. It was unexpected her to be queen, actually. Okay, but then she was guilty of treason and executed at the Tower of London.
Oh, what a pity.
Yeah.
So, who did he marry after Anne Boleyn?
After Anne Boleyn, he married Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour was a lady in waiting to Anne and Catherine. Catherine, wife number 1 and 2. So when Henry married Jane, she successfully managed to give him a baby boy.
Oh, what was his name?
He was Prince Edward VI.
And he became King Edward the Sixth.
Yes, he became king at 9. So he was too young, so we had a protector to help him with all his duties.
So after, you said Jane Seymour married Henry VIII, and what happened to her after the birth of Edward?
After that, after 2 weeks after she gave birth, she fell ill and she died of childbirth.
Oh, that's a pity. What about after that? Who did he marry after that?
He married Anne of Cleves.
Where's she from? Was she English?
No, she was a German princess. It was Anne von Cleve.
Ah, I see. That was her German name. I see.
Yeah. She was the daughter of a German duke.
Mm-hmm.
So he sent his most trusted painter, oil painter, Hans Holbein,
Yeah.
to Germany to paint a portrait of the princess.
Okay.
And then when he sent it back, Henry was delighted and asked Anne to come to England so he could marry her.
So he liked her based on the painting.
Yeah,
That
based
she
on the
thought that
painting.
she was pretty.
But unfortunately, she was a bit more ugly. She was a little less pretty than the one in the portrait.
So she put a lot of makeup, perhaps?
No, they just wanted him to marry her, so they faked the portrait because there was no pictures at the time.
All right.
Okay.
So
that was
the marriage didn't last very long?
It only lasted around 6 months, 7 months. It was the shortest marriage of King Henry VIII. But after he divorced her, she agreed. So he gave her £30,000 every year for agreeing in 5 palaces.
5 palaces?
Yes,
Wow.
that's what I think actually. That's for agreeing with the king.
Agreeing to divorce. I
Yeah.
see.
Well, she was the luckiest. At least she didn't get beheaded.
What about the other queens after that? Who did he
After
marry?
that, he married teenager Catherine Howard. Catherine Howard was a cousin of Anne Boleyn. She was a teenager when he married 56-year-old Henry VIII. Well, that wasn't a successful marriage either. Well, what happened is that she found guilty of treason again, and she got executed just like her cousin Anne.
Oh, so Catherine Howard and Anne Boleyn are cousins?
Yes, they're cousins. Catherine Howard's mother is a sister of Anne Boleyn's mother.
Oh, I see. And
Last wife was Katherine Parr. Well, that was the most successful because she was the only one of the 6 wives to survive everything.
wow,
So,
lucky for her.
yes, divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived.
So tell me a bit about.
Well, King Henry didn't like Catherine, so when King Henry went to fight in war, he died, and she married someone else, Thomas Seymour.
So tell me a bit about what happened after Henry VIII died.
No, I'm still telling you about Katherine Parr.
Okay, tell me about Katherine Parr.
Okay, Katherine Parr was the 6th of the 6 marriages of Henry VIII. Well, King Henry didn't like her and was planning a second marriage. I mean, a 7th marriage.
Oh, so he actually planned a 7th one.
But he died before that could actually happen.
Well, it's lucky for her.
Yeah, lucky for her. She nursed him with his ulcered leg. So during wife number 2's reign, Anne Boleyn, he did a jousting performance, and it was really risky because that time there was no surgeries, there was no antibiotics or anything that could heal a wound. So he became really ill-tempered and storming around.
So you think that he became worse after the illness? after the injury?
Yeah. He became fat and fat and fat.
Why do you think that he became fat?
Because he just ate and ate, but he didn't exercise like he was last time.
So he couldn't exercise.
He couldn't exercise. Well, actually, last time he ate the same amount as he ate when he became ill-tempered. So, but it's energy in plus energy out. When it's energy in plus energy in, of course, that will lead to an obese weight.
Yeah. Okay, coming back to Henry VIII, after he died, who actually succeeded him?
Of course, his favorite child, Edward VI.
How old was he when he became king?
He was 9.
9 years old.
He was 9 years old when he succeeded Henry. So he needed a protector. So they got the Duke to help him. He died at the age of 15 due to tuberculosis and gave the throne to Lady Jane Grey.
Oh, who's Lady Jane Grey?
Lady Jane Grey is Elizabeth's cousin, Mary's cousin to be more clear.
Okay.
Okay, so she was
How old was she?
9 days queen. She was 15 years old
15, right.
when she got the throne. She ruled for 9 days until she got executed by Mary.
So she only ruled for 9 days?
9 days. The second, which was most important, well, actually not many came to her coronation.
Yeah.
And her father...
Because she was not in the list of succession, right?
No. The only reason Edward asked Lady Jane Grey to be queen is you have to look at the family map. Lady Jane Grey was the daughter of Henry VIII's sibling, Margaret.
Right.
I think so. Yeah, Margaret.
Mm.
She was the daughter. So her father, Mr. Grey, sent her up to be queen. Okay, so she became the 9 days queen, but she's considered Lady Jane Grey, not Queen Jane Grey.
Yeah.
So after she was executed in the Tower of London by Queen Mary became queen.
Yeah.
Well, she restored Catholicism back to England.
Yeah.
And
Was the people happy?
of course they were happy. They were happy in the beginning. They knew she was supposed to be queen. And everyone turned Catholic, and she burned around 300 Protestants.
She burned? Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
She
okay.
burned and killed. And that's why she got the nickname Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary.
And she got a cocktail
What a
named
nice
after
name.
it.
Yes. There's a
Yeah.
cocktail name after Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so she wanted to show her powerful faith for Catholicism.
Yeah.
So she married Prince Philip of Spain,
Oh, okay.
a foreign prince, to show, well, he was Catholic, to show his
Of course.
power.
Yes.
Okay? But then he divorced her, he dumped her. Then after that, she got a foul pregnancy.
So it was not a pregnancy.
No, it was a foul pregnancy. It looks like you're pregnant, but you're not pregnant.
But what was it?
It was
Was it a tumor?
It wasn't a tumor. It could be a molar pregnancy or a fetal misdevelopment.
I see.
Or maybe just a miscarriage, but that couldn't be a miscarriage because she wasn't pregnant at all. Okay, so she got a cervical cancer and died. Well, her council persuaded her to give the throne to Queen Elizabeth,
Yeah.
who was not supposed to be queen. Well, due to many traumatic things, she became queen. And she was the longest ruling monarchs.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. She was 70 years old when she died. And she ruled for a great 45 years. So during that year, she was so famous for beating the Spanish Armada.
Yeah.
Well, she killed Mary Queen of Scots, her sister and one of Lady Jane Grey's siblings, Mary Queen of Scots, but I don't think it's a sibling. Mary Queen of Scots, her cousin, because she was Catholic and because she came to England for shelter. She was jailed for over 20 years, and finally Elizabeth signed the death warrant and she got executed on the Tower of London. Well, what happened then is she said that she didn't want to kill Mary, and that she said that was a mistake, so she canceled everything, but it was too late because she was dead. Actually, yeah, so that became really bad, and Philip of Spain wanted to attack England for killing Mary, their queen. So that's what happened. She beat them, and then that was the golden age. So when they attacked again, she had no power. So she had power, but she summoned the Earl of Essex to be the leader of that troop to fight against Spain. Well, she was growing older and older, and she put lead on her face every day. And sometimes she keeps it for weeks because it takes around 4 hours
to just put it on.
To dress her whole body.
Yeah.
It takes 4 hours.
Why do you think that she put such makeup on her face?
Actually, she doesn't only use lead. She uses leeches to suck the blood to make her look pale.
Yeah.
Well, other people think she's pale enough. She's white. She follows her mother Anne Boleyn and wears her jewelry. Well, of course, you can't tell that she likes her mother Anne Boleyn because, well, she was guilty of treason.
Yeah.
Okay, so
let's talk a bit about Earl of Essex. Who was he actually?
He was an earl, actually. Actually, I'm not sure much about his background, but he was the one who started a rebellion against the Queen to gain power in court.
Was he in love with the Queen before?
Actually, if he married the Queen, well, that would be impossible because she refused to marry after someone died.
All right.
Actually, so if she married Earl, he was 25 and she was 55.
Okay.
So that would be a big difference. And he was half her husband, half her son.
Yes. So what led her to rebel against the Queen? What prompted him to rebel against the Queen?
So it all started when he was celebrated joyously when what is this? When he celebrated joyously after they beat the Spanish Armada. So he was congratulated again and again and again and again and again. So the Queen got tired of it, actually, and she asked them to stop. But they keep doing it again and again and again and again and again. Okay? So they didn't stop. Until the Earl started causing some problems. So that made her kick him out of court. And he said that wouldn't be a death punishment, but the penalty will be you can only stay at home and you can't go into court again. You won't have power anymore. You're not an earl anymore. Okay, so what happened after that is, well, he knows that he is still the earl, so he did the only thing he could to get back the power. Can you guess what it is?
What did he do?
Can you guess what he did to get it back power? He was just in this whole cottage again.
I don't know. He wrote a letter?
No. He must rebel against the Queen to get power because the Queen was aging and her health was starting to fail. So no one knows who would take the throne. So he said he was worth it.
Yeah.
Well, of course, that was a traitor to the country to say, I will take the throne. So of course that causes problems. So he wanted to rebel. So he got an army of around how many people? A few people, not a few people, but a lot, to rebel against the Queen. So of course she managed to protect her castle, or palace I should say. and she put the Earl under arrest.
Yeah.
Of course, the rebellion went on and on until they got tired of it. So she decided to execute the Earl. Of course, that causes less problems and less stress for the Queen. So that was happy, but not everyone was happy, for England's hero was killed. So after that, a new thing happened, okay? When she got the throne, of course, being queen is not easy. You have to form your own council by writing to people to join you, and you have to offer people money. She offered £20,000 for a protector for her. And also she got someone to be her assistant to help her with all this stuff, with the writing and all this stuff. Just like Mary, Jane had a council. It was called the Privy Council.
Jane who?
Jane
Seymour?
No, Jane Seymour was, she died a long time ago before Elizabeth.
So which Jane are you referring
Not
to?
before Elizabeth, but after Elizabeth. So Lady Jane Grey,
All right.
the 9 Days Queen,
Yeah.
had the Privy Council to support her status as Queen Jane.
Was she Catholic or Protestant?
She was a Protestant. That's the only reason Edward wanted her to be queen, because he wanted to avoid Catholics. Well, even though Elizabeth was Protestant, they were announced bastards. Both Mary and Elizabeth were announced bastards from their father, King Henry VIII. So they were not eligible to the crown. So he gave it to Jane Grey, who then lost her crown and gave to Mary.
She lost her crown and her head.
Yeah. She lost her crown and her head. Well, then Mary took the Privy Council. Well, of course, it wasn't. Of course, after she died, after just 5 years of her rule, the throne went to Elizabeth. Okay, so she made her own council. And of course, she was just like Mary. She killed many Catholics for
Oh, she
being
did.
Catholics. Actually, there was one story about this lady called Margaret. Actually, she was a Catholic. And in Elizabeth's time, it's not a safe thing to be. So she refused to go to Protestant churches. So people became worried about it. So one day they caught her and they put her in
They caught her
trial.
for not going to a Protestant church.
Or for being Catholic, because she was stubborn, so
Yeah.
she refused to do any Protestant things, because usually a Protestant in Elizabeth's time would pretend to be pretend to be Protestants, of course.
Yeah.
Pretend to be Protestant, okay. So they went to church, they did their prayers, and of course they could not keep any candles in their houses, or else they would be caught.
Yeah.
So they just did private prayers at home. But of course that was a good thing to be in Mary's reign. But now everything changed, so it became confusing. First it was Catholic in Henry's time, then Protestant, then when it's Jane's time, then Edward's time, Protestant, and then Jane, 9 Days rule is Protestant, and Mary's rule, Catholic, Protestant. We don't know which one to be. So we're just turning back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Okay. Let's go back about Elizabeth. Did she lead the army when there?
Of course she couldn't lead an army. She was a woman. So she hired someone to lead the army for her, and that was the Earl.
But she made a speech somewhere. Was it at Tilbury? She made a famous speech.
Yes, that speech actually.
Yeah. Do you remember
She-
some of the speech that she said?
I know I have a body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have a heart and stomach of a king, and a king of England too. And foul scorn that no prince of Europe shall dare to invade the borders of my realm. Well, she said many other things too.
Yeah. So when she said this to her
well,
army,
it was not true she was weak and feeble. She slapped her assistant with an ear. She slapped the earl.
yeah,
She threw her shoe at servants.
yeah.
Well, that hurt. And she punched people. She kicked people. And of course, that was not considered weak and feeble. And she even wrote a letter to the earl that was so fierce he fainted.
Really?
Yeah.
So she's very strong with her language.
Yeah. Actually, she used a lot of swear words. She picked it up all from her father,
Yeah.
who was a potty mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about the eccentric characters of Elizabeth. What's weird about her?
She won't marry. What's weird is she won't marry. She refused to marry. Usually other queens, well, if they are like Elizabeth, the virgin queen, well, of course, they would sometimes be persuaded they would someday be persuaded by her council to marry. But Elizabeth has resisted the urge for 45 years of her reign.
Yeah. So finally, when she died, how did they decide on the succession to the throne of England?
What is it called? Okay, her assistant, the one that helps her with the writing and everything, but of course she can write everything. It's just her assistant. He had an arrangement with the Earl to make James king.
Who is James?
James is Queen Elizabeth I's nephew. So of course their wish was granted and James was the new King of England.
Where was James from?
I'm not really sure. Do you know? He was from, oh yes, now I remember. He was from Scotland. Okay. So when he took the throne well, many things changed too, but of course the Protestant religion went on from that century to many other centuries until now. The Church of England is still existing now. Well, isn't it a weird story? But after it ended with Elizabeth, then the Stuart family. I'm not sure whether it was George or William, but I'm sure it wasn't the Georgians. Yes, it wasn't the Georgians. It was William III and his wife Mary the Second. The first was Elizabeth's sister,
yeah.
half sister to be more specific. Okay, so Mary II and William III ruled equally, king as queen.
William of Orange.
Yes, they made a promise. They said, okay, if I take the throne, we must rule equally. So they ruled equally. And of course, Mary couldn't give birth. So after she died of smallpox, he was supposed to live in Hampton Court alone. But before they decided a palace to live in, they decided to live in Hampton Court again. After King Henry died, well, that place grew gloomy. It's been left there for almost a century and a half, actually. So after they took that palace, they said they didn't like it. So they said, we're gonna knock down the whole thing. Okay, but they said that was too expensive. Nah, that's too expensive. So just build a new palace, but that was too expensive too. Then they said, let's knock down half of it. Okay, so they knocked down half of it. But luckily, he died before they could get that plan to action. That's why it's like they said it's like two palaces combined in one. So it's like a century and a half difference. And the Tudors and George and Mary were the last ones, the last monarchs to rule in the Stuart family.
Was it the Stuart? Was
Yeah,
the Stuart?
they were the last one. They
So
were
after the Stuart was the Hanoverians, right?
No, the Georgians. It wasn't it the Georgians.
No, they are called Hanover because they were from Hanover. George the First was from Hanover.
Yeah, he ruled with his wife Caroline.
Yeah.
Well, they stayed in Hampton Court too. Okay, so they enjoy their own things in that palace. So after George found a mistress, well, Caroline became sad. So she just started eating chocolate, chocolate, until she grew so fat she didn't feel like she was in life anymore.
Yeah.
So when they died, they hated their son, their eldest son, Frederick. So it passed on to their grandson, and of course, I'm not sure whether that started a new dynasty, but I'm pretty sure it didn't end there.
All right, so we have covered a lot about Hampton Court. What do you think about Hampton Court after visiting it? What do you think about that place?
It's like two palaces in one. Well,
So you can see the different era between the Tudor era and the Stuarts and the Hanoverians.
Actually, let me tell you a bit about how they dress. In the Tudors in Henry VIII's time, it's totally opposite from the Victorians. They do not wear corsets. They just let loose skin and flesh let out. And in that time, being fat is, it's part of fashion. It's considered fashionable. But in Victorians, they started wearing corsets and it became ugly. So after that, the Elizabethan time came and they started wearing ruffs
Around their neck.
And they wear metal. They wore metal cages on their waist to make the dress big because they didn't want to sew so many layers because that would be expensive, especially for Elizabeth. Her clothes was sewed with gold. It's lined with gold, and it's silver, bronze, and so many other precious jewels. And there was the lost dress of Queen Elizabeth I, which was never found. That's why it was called the lost dress. Well,
But when at Hampton Court you saw that dress?
We saw the cloth of the dress, actually. And another interesting fact about Hampton Court. Another interesting fact about the clothing, I forgot to finish it. In the Elizabethan time, they wore ruffs, and they wore ruffs all around. Okay, so when they were so big, it could go around this big. They couldn't feed themselves, so they invented. It's so-called an invention, a really long spoon that can go around this long, to feed the ladies and the men. And if they were in the rain, everything would just plop down. So there was a
So
high.
at least their clothes won't get wet.
Yeah, so they have to wear umbrellas, and the queen is sheltered. Well, they don't have good umbrellas that time, so I don't know how they don't get it not to fall down. Hello, everyone. That is the end of the Tudors, the Stuarts, and the Georgians. Now, before I end this video, I would like to leave you, yes, you, with some spooky thoughts. Okay? So now, I'm going to talk about the secrets and the mysteries of Hampton Court Palace. Hampton Court was not that spooky at the time when it was just built. Can you imagine? Like a new building you just built and it's spooky. Well, that doesn't make sense. Well, Hampton Court is now more than 500 years old when it was built in the 16th century. And now it's full of spooky things. There is actually real claims and mysteries about Hampton Court Palace. And the mysteries behind it cannot be solved by science. For years, there have been traumatic experiences in there. There have been ghosts wandering in that place for years and years. Now let me tell you the first case. I bet you guys know about Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen. Well, she was a nurse for Edward. And she nursed Edward when he had tuberculosis. So when Edward died, she was just spinning the needle like Tudor ladies just do. Spin, spin, spin. Witnesses say that they hear a young woman's voice every time they hear a young woman's voice, and they hear a spinning of a needle. Well, that could have been Lady Jane Grey because that was the place Edward died. And another case was with the haunted dog. Well, I don't know much about this dog, don't blame me. No one taught me, actually. So, this dog, or whatever it is, was running around, and people sometimes trip on an invisible thing and hear barking, 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 barking. Well, when they turn around, they don't see any dogs because literally there's no pets in that place. So that could have been a dog that belonged to one of the monarchs. And another case is the opening door. This is one of the spooky cases, actually. Actually, this happened with Henry VIII's fifth wife. It was his fifth wife, and Catherine Howard was about to get executed. Somehow she managed to escape the guards, and she ran down the hall and begged for her life. Well, the guards dragged her away, and she screamed and screamed and screamed for mercy. Well, of course, no one believed her, and she was executed the day after. Well, now it is nicknamed the Haunted Gallery because everyone hears women screaming for help. And they hear screaming, and they hear dragging, and they hear all sorts of noises. And one princess complained that whenever they sleep there, they feel cold breezes on their face and wake up with terror. And another case, in 2018, this is witnessed by the, what is it called? The CCTV. One of the exit doors in Hampton Court Palace was found by the CCTV. At night, it keep opening and closing. And when they find there is no one there, actually. There is no one there. So that was one of the spooky ones because it haunted people. When everyone was there, it was okay. But they said keep clear of that door and don't go near it because it might be haunted. And well, there are some dark places people are forbidden to enter. When I entered the museum, I was allowed to go here, but I wasn't allowed to go there. Well, I thought it would be fun, and they forbid me from going to the places I actually want to go. Well, these are the spooky places, I realize. Actually, so that was really haunted. And there is one, I can't remember the exact case, but they hear a marching band nearby. And actually, most of the spooky things happen at night, of course. When no one is there, well, the ghost can just haunt around saying, ooh. Actually, they're pretty harmless, but they do spook people because it can't be scientifically proven that ghosts are real. Do you believe ghosts are real? Well, if you're brave enough, you can go to Hampton Court and you can check all the mystery ghosts over there, especially the ones about Catherine Howard. Well, not actually. Most of the stories behind it relates to the Tudors, not the Georgians, not the Stuarts, the Tudors. All the stories behind the Tudors, and especially all the worship there. When Mary was Catholic, not when she was Catholic, well, there was full of candles there, and it was really, really isolated after almost a century and a half after they abandoned that place, after King Henry died. Okay? That's all, friends. Bye!